Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Eruvin Daf. We begin on the bottom of Hayamid Beis, 2 lines up in the bottom of the Amid, where we continue our discussion regarding a pirtz in the Mavai, regarding a breach in the Mavai, regarding what invalidates it and considers it not a valid Mavai. She is co-sponsored because of Nefesko or anytime Davachayim. Some ideas we can speak about today's Daf are, as we just mentioned, regarding the Rishus Harabim. So if you can see in the picture over here, this is how it was in Talmudic times. The Mavai was the alleyway, and there were courtyards open up into the Mavai. And then you have the crossbeam. That's one of the ways which our Masechta open up. You could commit a Rishus Harabim. What happens? How big could the breach be that we say, okay, look, this is not a Mavai anymore? Or do we say that, no, it's still considered as a Pesach, as an opening? This we're going to discuss a very interesting case today regarding an L-shaped Mavai. What's the halacha? How do you fix this? Where do you put what? Are you going to put cross beams? Where are you going to put it? We're going to see there's a machlekes regarding that case. Then there's what's called a Mavai Mefulish, which if a Mavai is open up on either side to Rishus Harabim, what the halachic status of that is, because when we opened up our Masechta, the halacha of Mavai Shugavai, we were discussing actually what's called a Mavai Sasim. But this is going to be a question regarding a Mavai Mefulish. What's the halacha? What do you do over there? Then we're going to have another interesting case of how Mavai Akum Dav in Arda. In Arda, there was a U-shaped Mavai, which was not just a Mavai Akum, L-shaped, this is a Ches shape. What do you do in that case? Where do you put what? There's 4 different areas that you could possibly put something, a crossbeam, a side post, what's called Lechet, a Kairo, or Tzuras HaPesach. We'll see what they actually did and what the reason for that is. And then some of the key terms and concepts are Bika Motzav Agader Bogader, which is sometimes if you find it what's called an open field, you're going to make a fence around it because it's open and vulnerable to other elements. So that's the idea when there's people that are not so careful with halacha. Sometimes the rabbis are more stringent, and we'll see that comes up relevant in today's daf. The concept, like we said, of Mavai Mefulish, which is, again, the word Mefulish means is flush, it's open on either side to Rishus Harabim. Mavai Sasim, that's what we were discussing in our Mishnah, which opened up this Masechta, which is a closed Mavai, what we call a cul-de-sac, the dead-end street, or that was the common in Talmudic times, that has its own halachic status. Then, like we said, the L-shaped is what called in the Gemara, it's called a Mavai Akum, a bent Mavai, which is a machlek, is exactly what we do with that Mavai to fix that Mavai. And finally, the concept what's called halacha ve'imarikan. Something could be the halacha, but we don't rule like that. We don't tell you to do like that, and therefore we're going to see that significant in explaining the opinion of Rav in today's daf. So we begin the current daf, Daf Hayamid Beis, 2 lines up at the bottom of the Amid, where the Gemara brings the following teaching again, continuing on the theme of the previous daf regarding a breach by a Mavai. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav Amar Rav. It says Mavai shenifratz. So you can see over here the picture. If a Mavai had a breach, as you continue to Vav Med Aleph, again, you could follow in the Gemara, or every now and then, I don't point out, but we have the pictures, is always flowing. So it depends on what type of learner you are. Like we said, with the Davachayim style, I say out the Rashi, so just whatever your style is, you'll be able to find something over here as we're doing it. So if the breach is mitzidi on the side of the length of the wall, near the front of the Mavai, but, however, you do have, and we mentioned this at length in the previous daf, a 4 tfachim board that's still remaining from the opening until the breach. So then the breach is going to be be'eser. If it has an opening of 10 amas, it's still going to be kosher. That's called a pesach. It's not a breach. It's an opening. You could have openings into the Mavai. Now, that's on the side wall. But meiraishai, from the front of the wall, meaning, let's say, the way Rashi describes the case, the Mavai was 20 amas wide in the opening. Now, the thing is, we said in the one of the halachas initially said it can't be 20 amas wide. It has to be only 10 amas wide. So you closed off 10 amas of that 20 amas. Because the Mishnah said, if it's wider than 10 amas, you have to make it smaller. Now, so you have this, this is the picture actually, you took off, let's say this is 10 amas and this is 10 amas, you have the front wall, and then in that wall over here, the front wall, there's a breach in that front wall, meiraisha, not on the side wall, the front wall, because you had closed it off, it was too wide, you have to make it only 10 amas. Then bedalit, then the breach is going to be an invalidation if it's just 4 tfachim. So the Gemara wonders, wait a second, why? What's the double standard? Maishno, what's the difference? Mitzid Be'as, you tell me on the side wall, that's okay up until 10 amas. Dama, because you say, Pischahu, it's not a breach, it's an opening. That's okay. So Mereisha Nami, so why is it any different than the front wall? Name a Pischahu, say it's an opening. It's an opening, so why is it invalid by 4 tvachim? So Amar Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says, you're right, the case is not just in the front. If it just was in the front, just totally in the front, it would be, yes, a Pesach up until 10 amas. But we're talking about Kagun Shenifritz B'Karen Zavas. This we're saying in the front, as you can see the picture made it like that, which our pictures aren't always so precise, but here it is like that, where it's in the corner of the front. The pischa b'keren zavas loy of the inchi. You don't make an opening by a corner. You can't qualify. It's already halachically a breach once it's already a chash v'shir of 4 tefachim, because you're not making an open. No one's making a doorway in the corner, which Trace actually points out, just interestingly, although we said in the previous daf that you could have an opening by keren zavas. That's only if you literally make a door frame. If you make a side post, then it could be, and that's what we said in the previous daf. But if not, just general, if there's an opening, we're going to say that it's not an opening, and therefore, yes, that's why it's a breach over here by 4 tefachim, in contrast that in generally, like we said on the side wall, and even would be in the front wall if it wasn't on the corner, would be up until 10 hours. That's one opinion. But we have a disputing opinion. Rav Hunam, says no, echad zeh ve'echad zeh baba. He says no, either the side wall or the front wall is going to be considered as a breach with 4 tefachim. In general, he holds it's a breach with 4 tefachim. No double standard. It's always 4 tefachim. And v'chein amalei Rav Huna Rav Chanan bar Rav. He says to his disputant, these are the two opinions. Rav Huna is the one that says they're always 4 tefachim. He's saying to Rav Chanan bar Rav, who he had said that his version was that it's going to be depending if it's 10 amas or 4 tefachim. He says, "Lo tiflikala." He says, "Don't disagree with me that Rav had validated a breach of 10 amas on the side. Don't disagree with me." In other words, you wanted to say they're both saying in the name of Rav. This is Rav Huna, who's a student of Rav, and then Rav Chanan bar Rav had said in the name of Rav. He said that on the side it could be up until a breach of 10 amas. So Rav Huna says, no. Don't disagree with me. I can prove to you that it's always going to be a breach of 4 tefachim. You know why? Because the Rav Ikla Dam Charaya, he went to this place, Dam Charaya, Va'avad Ubdi Kavasi, and he did like me, meaning to say that when there was a side wall, there was a breach of 4 tefachim, he says, puzzle, you can't use the mavai. So you see, don't tell me in the name of Rav that on the side wall is up until 10 amas, because Rav himself passed and he ruled it was 4 tefachim on the side wall. So Malay, so he said, no, it's not a right, not a proof. Rav, Bika Matzah, he found what's literally means say an open field, which is the metaphor of amaratzim. People are ignoramuses, they're disgraceful with mitzvahs, so he made a fence around the open field, meaning in the mashal, he was stringent. He made a fence to distance people from sin, like a person who fences in the open area to protect it. Really the truth is on the side wall, you get up until 10 amas, because that's a Pesach. Over there, when there was 4 tefachim, he says, not puzzle, it's amaratzim. You're going to let them do by 4 tefachim. They're going to say, the rabbi once said this and that, and then by the corner they're going to say the same thing. He says, no. Therefore, he was stringent. But the truth is, don't disprove me that you're going to say in the name of Rab, it's only 4 tefachim. It's not true. It could be even up until 10 hours. But then the Gemara says, Amar Nachma Yitzchak, he says, Kabasei Rav Huna Mistaber. It's logical, like Rav Huna, that the truth is, even the side wall, you only get up until 4 tefachim and not 10 amas. Why did Malay we learned? Here it's a little bit complicated, so just like we say, hot cup. The Gemara is just trying to bring a raya, but whenever the Gemara does it brings the whole case, and you got to jump into this case. So forget about anything we're saying up until now. Mavai akum. We're discussing the following case. A mavai akum is L-shaped mavai. It's a bent mavai. Some Gemaras actually have the picture in the Rashi. There's 2 openings that it has to Rishus Harab, but we have the picture here, whichever one you want to look at. So it's a bent mavai. What's the halachi status of the bent mavai? Because if you really think about it, to some extent, it's really 2 different mavais. I mean, you can call it one mavai, but it's really, this is James Street and this is Adams Street. This is 2 different mavais. So what's the halacha? So Rav Amma, he says, Teirasik Kamafulish. There's actually 2 different ways in Rashi I've explained this. We'll say them both. But Teirasik Kamafulish means to say that we view this as one open mavai. Now, if it's one open mavai, because essentially what it is, the mavai opens up. What's a mavai mafulish? Mavai mafulish is open on both sides to the Rishus Harab. It's not closed off, it's open both sides. Here also it's open on both sides to Rishus Harab. You come in one side of Rishus Harab, and you come at the other side, it's also going to be Rishus Harab. So therefore, you need to have the Tzuras HaPesach, as this picture shows it, over here. The Tzuras HaPesach is a door frame. And you need to have a Lechi and a Kaira over here, and you need to have over here. Because that's what you need to have by a regular Rishus Harabim. You need to have the Tzuras HaPesach on one side, if it's open. If, as we'll learn later on actually on this daf, if it's open on both sides of Rishus Harabim, you need to have one side a door frame, and then the other side a Lechi b'Kair. So here also, for the 2 openings that open up to the Rishus Harabim, you need to have a Lechi by each side. And where it bends, you need to have it Tzuras HaPesach, because the fact that it's open to the other street is like opening up to Rishus Harabim. So each one, where it bends, is opening up to Rishus Harabim. It's going through the neighbors, through that end, but it's being considered as if it's open to Rishus Harabim. So each street, we're going to qualify as a Mavai Mefulish. So that's the halachic requirements according to Rab. Ushmulam, he says, Terasa Kisas. And the Tzuras HaPesach? So Tzurza Pesach really is like a door frame. Like we learned in the opening halacha by Mishnah that we said that if it's wider than 10 amos, we said you can make it Tzurza Pesach because it's not a breach, it's closed off. A door frame is like an opening. So even though, let's say, an opening only is up until 10 amos, a door frame is an opening. It is an opening, it's a door frame. A lech b'kara is a very unique leniency. We only say regarding Moabit. Let's say b'chatza, we don't say lech b'kara because what are you doing? What is this? What is a pole? Let's take that pole. What is it? What's this doing over here? But halachically we view it whether it's a hecker or whether it's like a mechitza, but it's a very shvach leniency. So as a Pesach is functions as a greater level of closing off the area. So really it's like closed up on three sides when we make the Tzurza Pesach. So that's really like a Mavas Sassan. It's enough for lech b'kara. That's how it works. That's why it's good, even though it's a Mavi Mefulish, because it really makes like it the Mavi Sassel on some level when you make it to a Pesach.
But why would the L shape be different than the regular Mavi Mefulish?
No, that's what it's saying. No, forget. Rav says it is like a Mavi Mefulish.
But you have to put something in the middle.
This is the Tzurza Pesach. This is Rav.
So, what if it's a regular Mavi Mefulish?
Mavi Mefulish, you make a one side Tzurza, but we're going to see that on the bottom of the stomach. On one side you make a Tzurza Pesach, on the other side you make a left B'kar.
By the turn.
This is where you make the Tzurza Pesach.
No,
because you don't need to. You only need to do one end. So here you get for both. Or else you would have to make Tzurza Pesach, and left B'kar here.
Technically, all you needed in both ends.
No, you need, when you have a Mavi Mefulish, one side is the Tzurza Pesach, and one side is here. Yeah. But then if you do it here, you have to do one here also.
Why? It's like
no, because they don't have. So they don't have. Taste discusses, right? They don't have a Tzurza. They don't see the Tzurza Pesach.
So because of it.
Right. There's a lot of discussion trying to simplify the Machlekes Rashi and Taste is exactly how to learn. There's two interpretations of Rashi. And Shmuel says no. He says Teresik Asasim. He says halacha like a closed mavli. And so the way one interpretation Rashi says, so by the bend you don't have to do anything. Rather, you make a lechi by the openings, and you're not going to need it. So it's a Pesach only if, let's say, it was open on straight on both sides for Rosh Hashanah. Another interpretation Rashi brings Teresik Asasim means it has halacha like a closed mavi, and then you have to make a lechi where it bends, and that would mean to say the bend is like a mavi sasim, and that's you have to make a lechi. But the way our pictures are showing it, it's like it's closed over here. Really, this is the end. It's closed over here. This is the end of this mavi. Boom, this one opens up over here, but each one's like a closed mavi. So you only have to make a lechi or a kaira at the corners. Now says the Gemara, this was the machlekes. Now we're getting to the main point, which is what we want to bring a raya, like this machlekes regarding a pirtz of a mavi on the side wall. Says the Gemara, Maiskin, what is this case that Rabbi Shloimy is disagreeing about? If you think that the width of this mavi, where it bends, is more than 10 ames, because if you really think about it just for 1 second, if you look at this street, what is this? What is this at the end? This is a pirtza on the side. If you think about it, right? You're not thinking in those terms, but the Eruvin, you have to do this a lot to get used to this. Right? This is really a pirtza at the end of this. This street ends over here. It's a pirtza. It's breached over here and it goes into this street. But this is a pirtza. So if you're going to tell me that this bend over here, this area where it opens up to the other one, is more than 10 ames, so then the whole name of Shmuel, you're going to tell me Shmuel's going to say over here terasik asasim, it's like a closed mavi that it's going to be enough with a lechi? What do you mean? Since it's more than 10 ames, obviously it's like one mavi. In such a case, Shmuel would never say that it's not mafulish. Of course it's mafulish because it bends a little bit. That's not closed off. It's such a wide opening. So it's not going to be like closed. So he would never say over there that's like sussing that you wouldn't have to do it Tzurza Pesach. Elulav, rather, isn't it obvious that be'eser, that it's only, and not more than that, only 10 ames. Become a Rav. And what does Rav tell us? Terasa kima foolish. Rav is saying that even though it's 10 ames, means it's not more than 10 ames, because Taisus brings that the halach of 10 ames is not like the one of 4 tvachim. 10 is like less, 4 is like more, which is invalid. But just be that as it may, it's not more than 10 ames. Become a Rav is saying terasa kima foolish, so it's like open. So you see, pirtzas mavoi bitsidoi is bedalid, because according to Rav, what's he telling us? We see from him is because this is, like we said, a breach on the side. And we're saying that it's going to be invalid if it's 10 ames because he considers it mafulish. It's like susim. No, it's not susim. Because 10 ames, you see, is a breach, not an opening. Oh, so you see like Ravuna, that a breach is an opening is only allowed if it's 4 tfachim. If it's 10 ames, it's already considered as a breach. Did you get that? I'll say it again because it's a little confusing. This is a pirtza bitzida of this street and of this street. This street ends over here. There's a breach over here for either one. And you're telling me it can't be more than 10 ames because then Shmuel wouldn't say it's closed. You tell me it's 10 ames. 10 ames, you're telling me that it's a Pesach, it's like foolish. I mean foolish. It's closed. It's an open. A Pesach is closed. When you have a doorway between two houses or two areas, the doorway is like closed. It's just I'm allowed to go from one to the other, but it's closed. It's a good mavoi. It's a good mavoi sasim. You tell me it's not? It's foolish? That means to say that 10 amas is not a Pesach. It's a pirza. That's like Rav Huna who says even mitzido, it's going to be 4 tvachim, not 10 amas. Because if you held 10 amas, then it would be valid. And you see that it's not. So it says the Gemara, so that was a good long raya to prove, to which the Gemara says, Rav Chanan Rava, he says no. Shani Hasam, there it's different as we had said. This is Rav Chanan's response. He says, the Kaboki Barab. Yeah, come on. That's not just like a regular 10 amma breach. It's not just a breach. People are walking through. This is an open street. People go and they come into shul and they're walking this way and that way. So that's why it's going to be considered a breach, even though it's 10 ammas. But normally, it would not be a breach. It would be considered as a Pesach. So therefore, it's not a raya to Rav Huna. But then the Gemara asks another question. Hold on to the train over here. Mechlal Rav Huna, but the inference is that Rav Huna, who disagrees with Rav Chanan, again, Rav Chanan just responded and he said, wait a second, not a raya, because Balki Birab. So Rav Huna, who disagrees, obviously holds that when there's a breach, that even if the street does not, the people don't walk through that area. For example, let's say the breach is to a filthy area, or to like a garbage dump, or whatever it is, where people don't normally walk over there where the breach is. It would sound like from Rav Huna that still he would say it would be invalid with 4 tvachim, right? Because what Rav Chanan is saying? Rav Chanan is saying it's only because Balki Birab. But if it wasn't Balki Birab, then it wouldn't be. But Rav Huna, who obviously disagrees with Rav Chanan, would hold even if it's like Balki Birab, even people don't walk over there, a breach would be a problem with 4 tvachim. But says the Gemara, then why is it different than what we said in the previous daf? For Rabbi Ravasi, that they said that if there's a board of 4 tvachim near the entryway of, this is already part of that picture, that it permits, if you have a board of 4 tvachim up until a breach of 10 amas. So obviously you see that a breach on the side is up until 10 amas. How is Rav Huna saying that it's going to be a problem even like Balki Birab? Because if you would hold, he only says about Balki Birab, okay, you can answer here. Rabbi Ravasi was saying only when like Balki Birab, when people don't go through. So then it's allowed up until 10 amas. But now that we're saying Rav Huna holds the problem that even if it's more than 4 tvachim, even if people don't walk through, but doesn't that contradict the halacha of Rabbi Ravasi, who says that on the side you could have up until 10 amas? Says no, it doesn't contradict the halacha. Hasam over there is the Ikka Gedudi. There are these gidudi, which are remnants of the wall by the foundation, 3 or 4 tvachim high by the entire breached area, which is not easy to walk over. So then, up until 10 amas, we can still consider it as it's closed. Hacha over here, where Rav Huna is saying it's going to be prevented more than 4 tvachim, is the leka gidudi, where there's none of these breaches. There's none of the remnants of the wall. It's totally smashed out the wall. That's going to be up until 4 tvachim. When they said up until 10 amas, it's because you have these gidudi, and therefore it doesn't contradict the halacha of Rabbi Ravasi. Okay, next part of the Gemara. We'll continue on the thing because we just mentioned the Mava and the Foolish. When the Mava is open on either side to the Rosh Hashanah, so we're going to bring a brisa, which, although it actually sounds like it's something else, will be the case of Mava and the Foolish. Talk about the brisa. Ketzad ma'arvin derech Rosh Hashanah. How do you go ahead and make an Eruv? How do you privatize a public domain? How do you make an Eruv of a Rosh Hashanah? Now, it sounds like that the Gemara is talking about a bona fide Rosh Hashanah from the brisa, meaning to say it's 16 amas wide. It's a city that you have 600,000 people. There's no wall, or the Rosh Hashanah was straight from one gate of the city to the other gate of the city, which is mefulish, open up like the Diglei HaMidbar, like it was in the desert, like a bona fide Rosh Hashanah. So how do you, what?
Like Route 9.
Like, yeah, Route 9, what's considered Rosh Hashanah with 600,000 people every single day, Ocean Parkway, all these different, how do you make an Eruv Rosh Hashanah? So it's a machlekes. So, and we'll get back to explaining exactly what the real case is, but for now, there's 3 different opinions. The Tani Kama says, okay, you make a door frame on one side, which is on one end, and you put either, not both, either a crossbeam, which is called a kairo, or a lechi, or a side post, at the other end of the city. Now, Hananya, he says no. He brings 2 different opinions, that of Bishame and Beisil. Says Bishame and they say, you have to make a door on one end, Videlis Mekan and the door on the other end. When you go out and come in, the door has to be closed. That's how you make an Eruv for the city. The Sulam, they say, no, actually, you only have to make one door on one side, but you can put a crossbeam or a side post on the other end. That's the machlekes. Now, we'll explain in a second, but first the Gemara has a question. It says, wait a second. Could you even make an Eruv for a city? Can you do these technical halachic leniencies of doors or door frames or of lechis to permit a city to make it into Rosh Hashanah? But Batanya, we learned in the Brisa. Now, the first part of this Brisa was talking about if, let's say, you build an upper story going from house to house, and two sides of Rosh Hashanah. Very wealthy guy. He bought on one side of the street, and Tom's River, and he bought on the other side of the street, and he wants to go ahead and have it one house. So he goes and makes an overhead pass that goes from one house to the other house, or essentially it's really the same like a bridge. It's going from one side of Rosh Hashanah to the other side. Rabbi Yehuda, it's an interesting opinion we'll discuss in a different daf, he permits actually carrying beneath that bridge. Why? Because a very interesting halachic concept called pitik or yard b'seisim. If you think about a bridge or any roof, the roof has a side, the thickness of the roof has a thickness. That thickness is a wall. Pitik, or the opening of the roof, is like a really already halachic wall, a little bit. It's yard b'seisim. We view it as if it's coming down. So therefore, essentially, really the bridge is really closed on all four sides. Because you have either side of the bridge, or like talk about these two houses, and then the thickness of that roof has already a wall starting like good achis. We can view it as if it's coming down. Let's go Pete Ticker. Rabbi says you could carry in that area. And that's what the Brisa quotes. Yes, okay. Rabbi says even more than this. Even when you don't have Pete Ticker, even you don't have a way of saying halachically as if there's four walls, he says a greater leniency. Rabbi Yehuda, you continue to base. He says let's say all you have are two houses on either side of the street. You don't have any overpass, any bridge going. But since you have two bona fide walls on either side, you have the wall of this house and the wall of the other house, which Tosh actually says, not really houses, because a mavli is not permitted with just houses. You have to have courtyards opening up into the mavli. So it really means two houses, let's say, opening up into the courtyards, and the courtyards opening up to the mavli. But be that as an A, be that as a certain leniencies that you could do, all you have to do is make a side post on this side of the house, and then you make a side post on the other side of the house, on the same house. And then that's going to close it off as if you have the two sides of Rosh Hashanah closed off with those lechis, and you're allowed to carry from house to house. Let's say you have a crossbeam on one side or a crossbeam on the other side. Again, the same idea, but nice and you could carry in the middle. That's Rabbi Yehuda's leniency. Essentially, all you need is two halachic walls with a rice according to Rabbi Yehuda, and then as long as you have a lechi on either side of that house, so it's like, imagine the lechi is like a wall. So the lechis are closing off the two sides, or a kair on either side. They said, no, come on, Rabbi Yehuda, you can't make an Eruv for a Shusram. You're going across the street? What do you mean? How you making an Eruv for these cars are driving by? How are you making an Eruv in the middle of the street? Now, so one thing is, you see this, the Gemara's question, you can't be Ma'arv in the Rosh Hashanah. What are you talking about? So the Gemara says, wait a second. The Chita maybe going to say, don't reject us so fast that the Bryce is saying you can be Ma'arv Rosh Hashanah. Maybe it's Bakach. The Bryce we're bringing over here is saying, the Rabbanu telling Rabbi Yehuda like this. What was Rabbi Yehuda entertaining to say? He was entertaining to say, with a lechi on either side, that you can't do. That's who dulei ma'arva. But to us is ma'arva, but maybe with doors, which was our Bryce, and the first Bryce was saying, they were saying doors, they were talking about doors. Rabbi Shloimy said two doors, Basil said one door. Maybe with that you could be ma'arva shazram. That the Gemara rejects that too. No, because Rabbi Shloimy said Yerushalayim, Rishus Harabim, went from gate to gate. It was straight and open, and you had 600,000 people walking Yerushalayim, and it was 16 amas wide. So therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, if the doors weren't closed every night in Yerushalayim, you would be liable for carrying over there on Shabbos because you're carrying in the Rosh Hashanah. But because the doors were closed, so that then made it like a communal courtyard, and then you could be ma'arv the whole Yerushalayim. Now, therefore, as long as, even if you don't make an Eruv, but it's still going to be considered as a Carmelist, and you're not going to be liable. That's how the Gemara explains in the last paragraph on Kaf Alpha Manaf that Yerushalayim is a Carmelist. The reason for that is because the doors are closed. Doors are closed, okay, that's something else. But one thing is that you see, just having doors is not enough. The doors have to be closed. Not enough with one door, the way Basil says. You got to have at least two doors. They got to be closed. So how are you explaining the Bryce that's saying that you ma'arv Rosh Hashanah? Cannot be ma'arv Rosh Hashanah. Only if it's totally sealed off like a Yerushalayim. Then, but if not, you'd be chayiv. And so Devar Maruli says the same idea. It says Hane Abdullah de Mechuzah. Says these gates of the city of Mechuzah, which were one opposite the other, and there were 600,000 people. Same idea. Il Mali Dal Sin in the said the doors wouldn't be closed. You would be liable because it's a Rosh Hashanah. So one thing you see from the Gemara is that you need to have the doors closed every single night. And here we're saying in the Brisa, okay, you make one door over here, you make a lechek on the other side according to Basil. That's not possible. So how are we saying this Brisa in the first place? The Ma'am Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara says you're right. It's not really Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yehuda, he says what we're discussing over here. This is what the Brisa was saying. Is Keitzim Ma'arvin Mavais. How do we make an Eruv for a Mavai? And this is the picture that we're showing over here. Hamafulashim Rosh Hashanah. That's open and flush to Rosh Hashanah. So the case was not being Ma'arv Rosh Hashanah. Case was a Mavai. A Mavai is an alleyway. that's open on either side to Rosh Hashanah, that was their machlekes. And that's what we have, all these three different opinions. And that we have, that you can make a doorway on one side, you can make a side post or crossbar on the other side. That was the three-way machlekes Tanakama who just said that opinion, and then Chananya who said Beisham and Basil, they have two different opinions. Now, what is the halacha on this mavei hamafulish to Rosh Hashanah on either side? Sitma we learned to some machlekes. Rav Amen is going to be very important who rules like what, as we'll see shortly, the last case of this daf. Rav Amen says hilchos like the Tanakama. He says halachas like the Tanakama, which means to say, like this picture shows, according to Rav, you have to have a tzurus pesach on one side, and you have to have a lechi kaira on the other side. Ushmol, he rules halacha kechananya. Halacha is like chananya, and obviously like Basil, which is that you make a door on one side, and you make a lechi or kaira on the other side. Now, the following question: Lechananya libe Basil. Chananya, according to Basil, which is how Shmuel rules, tzarich linol. Do you have to close that one door? You don't need two doors like Bishamay. Bishamay had it specified that it has to be closed. Basil didn't say that. They just say you have to have the doors have to be closed, and you'll see this sometimes with modern day Eruvin. You'll see like they have a door, but it's never really closed. It's like they keep it like open. It's just like it has like a door. Do you have to close it, or in tzarich linol? Do you not have to close it? So it says more tashmatz bingarai because I'm reading Shmuel. He says in tzarich linol. It says clearly Shmuel says you don't have to close that door. Shmuel says in tzarich linol you don't have to close that door. Now Ikadam those that say Omer Masna, a different version, but the same halacha. But the diablo says I actually had a story. Shmuel said to me in tzarich linol you don't have to close the door. And similarly Boimei and Rabbanan, they had asked Rabbanan the same halacha tzarich linol according to Chananya in Basil. That you have to have a door, do you have to close it or not? Or ain't tzarich linol. Although he said to them, he brought a raya. He says, look, Tachazi haneavuli de Nardoi. Come and see what was by the doors of Nardoi. Nardoi, the end of the Mavi, was open to Rosh Hashanah. Same picture that we're talking about. The Timin al Palgayu Ba'afra. The doors were so never used that they were stuck halfway up, the halfway of the height of the door was stuck in earth. No one was able to move those doors, those city gates. They were like stuck in earth because of the earth. Halfway up, they were stuck in the earth. The Ayav and Avik Mar Shmuel, and Shmuel, the master Shmuel, was going in and out of that Mavoi, and people were carrying over there. He didn't tell them anything, obviously, because it doesn't have to be closed. Because if it had to be closed, how could this be functioning? He sees this door hasn't been moved in 10 years, and still he used it. You see, obviously, that those doors don't have to be closed, which Yoma rejects the Raya. And Amar Rav Kahani says, no, Hanach Megufas happened. Those doorways, they were not totally open. They were really magufas. They really were closed. They were only open a little bit. So essentially, that was like closed. Because most of it was closed. People were able to get in. And if it's not a raya, it could be a Shmuel would hold that it has to be closed. And actually, the Gemara brings Kios Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman actually came to Nahardah. Amar, he said, Panu Yilafrai. He says, get rid of this earth. Now, it says, Gemara, wait a second. Why did he say get rid of that earth? Lemix Rav Nachman, should we say Rav Nachman holds tzarich linol? You have to close the door? Obviously, why is he saying to get rid of the earth? Says the Gemara, no, lo, it's not a raya. Keeping the ru'uyas linol, as long as it's fit to be closed, even if it's not closed, that's enough. We find that halacha many times in Shas, and Menachas, and Roy Labila, has to be fit to be done. But it doesn't have to actually mikvahs, and when the woman goes to mikvah, she has to clean her teeth. It's not getting into it has to be able that it could get over there. And therefore, that's the same thing over here. No, it doesn't have to close it. It has to be able to be closed. But if it's stuck in the earth, it's not even able to, that's why he said declare the earth. Now, we have one final case in this Gemara, which is going to be very interesting. Just as a way of introduction, we had two machlokes Rabbi Shmuel on this daf that's both going to come as a head in this next case. We had regarding a mavi akum, if you recall, we spoke about the L-shaped mavi. We said Rav said it's like a mavi mafulish. It's like really open. It's like really considered open because it turns a bend, fine, but it's considered open. Therefore, you have to make a tzursa pesach and a lechi b'kayim. Shmuel says no, it's closed. This is where it closes. It's not. It's like just a pesach over here, but this is a mavi sasam. This is a mavi sasam. All you got to do is make a lechi b'kayim on either end. That was one machlekes. Another machlekes was regarding the halacha of a regular mavi mafulish. By regular mavi mafulish, Rav holds like the Tanakama. Remember, we just spoke right now. We had a machlekes we said it's not really Rosh Hashanah. We said it means really a mavi mafulish. Rav says like he rules like Tanakama. You make it tzursa pesach one, and then lechem b'kayim the other. Shmuel ruled like Hanani in Beis Hillel that you have to make a door, and the other end you make a lechem b'kayim. You got that? Two different machlekes Rabbi Shmuel on this daf that we had, which is going to come to head in this next Gemara's case. Hahu mavi akum dav benarda. There was a bent mavi, but not the L-shaped bent. This is a ches, a U-shaped bent. So you have over here this interesting case where this is two openings to Rosh Hashanah, and then you have two bents. So you know what the people in Ardor required? They imposed the stringency of Rav and the stringency of Shmuel in these two different machlekes. And they required doors by the two places where it bends. As the Gemara explains, what does that mean? Why? On the one hand, they imposed Rav's stringency dama that he says that when you have a bent mavai, here this is bent, right? It bends on two places. What did Rav say by a bent mavai? He says terasi kama foolish. When it bends, I don't care if it bends, it's still like it's open to Rosh Hashanah, because where do you come out? No outlet. No outlet is a mavai sasim. If there's an outlet, okay, where's the other side? Oh, it comes into Rosh Hashanah. That's a mavai mavulish. So here you have two bends. Each bend requires a door. Now wait a second. What do you mean a door? So even if Rav considers like a mavai mavulish, but he rules like the Tanakama that you don't need a door. All you need is a Tzuras HaPesach. What are they doing? Even by mavai mavulish. So what are you doing putting up a door? Kashmul. Dama that he says that when you have a mavim mafulish halacha kichananya, you need to have a door. Wait a second. Shmuel will require a door, but Rama Shmuel, he rules terasik isasam. He rules that this mavim mafulish is like a closed mavim, and then you don't need anything where it bends. So it doesn't make sense. If whoever you rule like would never hold that you need to have doors here by the bend. And that says the Gemara, that's karav, dama terasik mafulish. Yeah, but in that we hold like Rav that it says it is considered like an open mavoi, and on that open mavoi, Shmuel says you need to have as a door over there. So they took the stringency of Rav and the stringency of Shmuel. The Gemara said then it starts an interesting discussion. So again, that was interesting that the Gemara said that in their door they took the stringency of either opinion.
Then why isn't Tzuras HaPesach sufficient? Just like mavoi akum according to Rav.
That's Rav. Rav would say Tzuras HaPesach would be sufficient. They took the stringency of Shmuel, who says by mavim mafulish you need to have doors. But what do you mean Shmuel doesn't hold it's mafulish? He holds it. Yeah, they took Rav, who says it's considered mafulish. So they took the stringency of either one, and that's why they had to have doors where it bends. And that's what the Gemara ends off by the following discussion. Do we do like two stringencies that are, and the way Tais explains that neither opinion would hold that you have to have that? You're really taking the stringency of either opinion? But the time when the Bride says, halach is always like Beisil. But if you want to do like Bishama, you could do. But it's got to be either Kedivri Beisil or either you do totally like Beisil, but Mikuli Bisham, Mikuli Beisil, but to do either, to pick both leniencies of Bisham Beisil, that's a Rasha, that's a wicked person. But that Shaili goes to that road, but that Shaili goes to that road. He's got every leniency in the book, that you can't do. Mechumer Bisham, Mechumer Bisham, and you're taking everyone's chumras, so then Allah because of him and him, the pasuk says in Catalyst, Haksil B'chai Shechayel, the fool, he goes in the darkness. This and that, what do you want? Everyone's chumras you're taking? So, Ella rather, either it's got to be like Bashame with his leniencies, his stringencies. It could be Sil or Basil like his leniencies and his stringencies. Now, before we conclude the Gemara's question, the Gemara says, wait a second, Haguva Kasha. You just went and you contradicted yourself. You said Lo Malach Basil. You started by saying Halach like Basil. Then in the same breath you say Haretz Lask Bisham. I said you want to do like Bisham, you can do it. Anachab, you said Halach like Basil. How could you do like Bisham if you want to do it? Allah doesn't follow like it. Says Malika is not difficult. The Gemara gives three answers to that question. Kan over here when we said you could do like Bisham is Koidim Baskel. Before the heavenly voice came out, the Gemara is going to bring later on Daf Yomi Beis. A heavenly voice came out and said Halacha is like Basil. So then you're right. From that point on, Kan Lacha Baskel. When the Baskel already came out, then you can't do it. But before the Baskel, then you could choose to do like Bisham or Basil. But you got to pick one party and not the other one. Don't pick the leniencies of both or the stringencies of both. Or if you want to give another interpretation, actually both are talking about after the heavenly voice came out. That's the Tintav Design of an Aleph. Rabbi Shloimy, it's kind of like Rabbi Shloimy brought in the famous story in Bama Tzidaf in the Testament Beis that he says the Leimashkach Bad Baskel. He says we don't pay attention to the heavenly voice. Leiba Shemayim, he has nothing to do with heaven, and therefore even after the Baskel, that's the one who's saying there in the Brisa that if you want to do like Bisham, you can do it Bisham. Or if we're going to give a third answer and say when we said that who writes a lasses, whoever wants to do, it was not going on the actual machlekes Bisham Basil, because obviously you have to do like Basil. Rather, it's going on a similar machlekes tanoim. In general, when you have a machlekes like the machlekes in the Bisham Basil, just like Bisham Basil disagree, when you have, in general, hachikam, this is what we're saying. We have two tanoim, two amarim that disagree one with the other. Like machlekes Bisham Basil, then it's telling us you could choose whichever party, but don't pick each one's leniencies. Don't pick each one's stringencies. Ella rather, either you do like this party's their leniencies and stringencies, or you do like this one's leniency and this one's stringency. So we're able to understand the brisa. Okay, fine, we explained the brisa, but Mikavakim says the Gemara, however, so you explained the brisa, but kasha, but we still have our difficulty. The Nahardai, how did they do their two stringencies? How did they get off making doors here by the ends? Neither Rav or Shmuel would hold you have to make doors for whatever of the opinions of the Mavai Akum or of the Mavai Mavulish. So how are they going ahead and doing? We just said that's Ksil B'chai Shechaylich. That's a fool who does that, who takes the stringent of each one. And that the Gemara concludes that Amr of Nachman Yitzchak, he says, Kuli Karav Abdua. Actually, it was totally like Rav. Because Amr of Marav, he says, although the halach is like the Tanakama, that all you need to have by Mav Mafulish is on one side, a left Makar, and the other side, just a Tzuras HaPesach door frame, but Ve'ein Marin King. But we don't rule like that. Rather, we rule stringently, initially, like Hananya, that holds that you do have to have, like the Shmuel rule, like in Beis Hillel, that you have to have one side a door, and one side a Lachi B'Kaira, and therefore it's really all Rav. Rav would hold that yes, you have to have over here the doors, because initially Rav says, although the halacha really is like the Tanakama, but we really say that you have to do like the way Shmuel rules, like Hananya, to have a door, and therefore, since he holds that it's a Mav and a foolish by the Mav Akum, you would have to have a door, and therefore it's all like Rav. It wasn't like the stringent of Rav and of that of Shmuel. Something that we discussed in today's Daf in Eruvin Daf was we had two opinions in the Shita of Rav regarding what's the halacha. We spoke about a mavi that was breached on the side. So the first opinion says that you get up till 10 amas. In the front, you get only up until 4 tfachim. Now we explained it doesn't really mean the front. It really means beker and zavis in the corner, because in the front, why would the front be any different than the side? In the corner that people don't usually go ahead and make a pesach in the front. I mean by a corner. So therefore you get only up to 4 tfachim. But again, we even said the place, if you actually made a door frame, it could even be on the side. But that's where in the front it's only going to be 4 tfachim. The other opinion said no. Rav Huna said that echad zeh ve'echad zeh is only going to be barba. You only get 4 tfachim. More than that can be considered already as a breach. Now, the Gemara wanted to bring a raya, and it's not a proof from the story that happened, where you see that Rav invalidated even a side wall for more than 4 tvachim, because that's what's called bika matzah together. He found a breach. This was the amaratza more, so he's more stringent, but really you could be even up until 10 amos. And another raya that the Gemara says ultimately is not a raya, that the Rav would hold that it's only going to be 4 tvachim even on the side. We brought the case of a machlekes of mavi akum, of a bent mavi, which is an L-shaped mavi. Rav says it's like mafulish. It's like open, this is Rosh Hashanah, this is Rosh Hashanah. We view it as if it's open on both sides to Rosh Hashanah. Shmuel says no, it's considered like closed. Now the Gemara presumed that that's obviously not going to be more than 10 amas. Because how could you say that it's like closed? If it's open on the bend more than 10 amas, you're not going to say it's going to be enough with like nothing over there, just Lechi B'Kar. Lechi B'Kar doesn't even work more than 10 amas even by regular moment. So you can't say it's like closed over there. So obviously it's only 10 amas. And yet you see that according to Rav, when it's 10 amas, you're telling me that it's a pirza. How do I know that it's a pirza? Like a breach, not an opening. Because what are you saying that it's going to be mafulish? Did you have to make it so it's a Pesach? No, it's closed. It's a Pesach. A Pesach is like closed. A Pesach is like closed off. Obviously you see that a Pesach even on the side, because as we said, that's really, this Mavai is really, this area is the side. It's mitzidai. Over here, it's the end of this. It's the side for this one, let's say at least. So you see that still, it's only going to be up until 4 tfachim, because you see by 10 amas, it's not valid. So the Gemara says, no, there it's different, because there it's baki b'ram. Because people walk through. Normally it would be on the sidewall up until 10 amas, but people walking through, we can't just view it as if it's closed, and therefore, that's why it's going to be invalid. But generally, it would be up until it would be actually up until 10 amas. Now, Rav Huna, however, this was the Gemara's question, interesting question, the Gemara says, but he obviously holds it's going to be 4 tefachim even if it's not Baki B'Rabim, because it's only Rav Chanan, who he holds usually 10 amas, that he explains because Baki B'Rabim. That's Rav Chanan. Rav Huna, who's disagreeing, saying it's always 4 tefachim, obviously if it's like Baki B'Rabim, so wait a second, isn't that difficult for Rav Ami from the previous stuff? We said that on the side, okay, we could have said that they hold when it's Loi Baki B'Rabim and he's Baki B'Rabim, but he's saying even Loi Baki B'Rabim is only 4 tefachim. So how do we understand that they say you could have 10 amas? He says no, it's not difficult, because over there, B'Rabam or Basi, there's this gedudi. There's this, when you have the breach in the wall, so you have these little things over here on the bottom still remaining, therefore we're going to let you up until 10 amas. But we're talking about with this Leki gedudi, then it's going to be invalid even on the sidewall, only if it's more than 4 tefachim. Then we had a brayso that says, Tarnabanan, how could you be ma'arv derech Rosh Hashanah? So the Gemara ultimately explained, we're not talking about Rosh Hashanah, we're talking about a mavai that's open on each side to Rosh Hashanah. The reason for that is because you cannot be ma'arv Rosh Hashanah even with a door, unless if it's closed, or at least if it's 2 doors like Yerushalayim, Nabul Mechuzah, and Basil, they're saying 1 door and it doesn't have to be closed. How could you say that? Obviously it's not a Rosh Hashanah. So it's a mavai maful Rosh Hashanah. We have 3 different opinions. The Tanakama had said that a Tzuras HaPesach on one side, and the other side you have a Lechi or a Kaira. Chananya brought two opinions, that of Beishamai and Beisil. Beishamai holds no, you need two doors and they have to be closed. Beisil says you can have a door on one side and a lechi car on the other side. And the Gemara ultimately explained that door does not have to be closed. Now, we had a machlekes, Rav and Shmuel, who the halacha is like. Rav says the halacha is like the Tanna Kama Tzusa Pesach. Shmuel said the halacha is like Chananya, who, like Beisil, that you have to have a door. Now, the Gemara says there's no raya from Navulid Narda that there you see that they didn't close it because one Mandama says no, it was Megufah, it was like mostly closed, and therefore that's why they didn't have to close it. But it's not a raya that it wouldn't have to be closed. But actually, Rav Nachman, he came along and he said, clear out the earth. Why does they clear out the earth? Not because they always have to close it. No one holds they have to close it. It just has to be ru'uyis lino, it has to be fit to be closed, and therefore he says clear out the earth. But everyone held that you don't have to actually close those doors in Chananya according to Beisil. Now, we had, interesting, the last case of the Gemara was a Mavi Akum that was Narda, but it wasn't just an L shape, it was a U shape. So you had over here a Ches. So we had the interesting, they required doors by these two corners. So the Gemara says, wait, that's the stringency of Rav and the stringency of Shmuel. Because Rav says that we view a Mavi Akum like it's mafulish, like it's open, to Rosh Hashanah. And Shmuel holds Allah is like Chananya requires a door, so we're taking either stringency, because either according to Rav or Shmuel, you wouldn't require doors, because either it's closed, Sasim doesn't need anything, not Tzurza Pesach, not door, and if it's open, which is like Rav, well, he doesn't hold that you need a door, you just need a Tzurza Pesach. So the Gemara says, do you do like this two stringencies? That's considered like a fool, which we explained parenthetically in the Brisa, that how do we say you could do like Bisham if you want to, either that's before the Baskel, or that's like a Yeshua who's not Mashkech of Baskel, or means like the Machlek is Besham Esil, but not really by Besham Esil. But one thing is, how could you like two stringencies, you're a fool? Says Gemara, no, it's all like Rav. Rav says, although he says the halach is like Tanakama, but he says it ain't Moiri Kain. Rather, initially we rule like Chananya that requires doors, and therefore initially you're going to do like that. So therefore there was all like Rav by having doors by the Mavi Akum of the Ches in Rosh Hashanah. Thank you to any time for hosting us.